Hello, guys. Welcome to our class, Finding the People in Your Chart. We're teaching this on December 14th, 2025. And it is fun to find the people you love in your chart or the people you don't love in your chart. Oh my gosh. Okay, people are showing up. I'm going to turn, I don't know what AI Companion does, but let's put it on and see if it does anything useful. And I'll let you guys into the room. And where is my let you into the room button disappeared to? Crazy, crazy. I'm having one of those days. No, I'm sharing my desktop. Don't ask. Don't ask. Welcome. We are going to be learning about how to find the people in your chart and see what happens when we do that. And it's going to be fun. I like looking for the people in my chart, and it's pretty comprehensive today. And if you're just new to astrology, and then you're just starting out, some of it can be maybe a bit difficult. I hope not, only because the whole point of finding the people in your chart is to find the planet that represents that person, whether it's your child or your parent or spouse. And then knowing planetary meanings, understanding like what the planet means, what the sign means, what the dignity of the planet means, what the house it's in means. You get to conceive of how this person is important to you or what role they play in your life. So there's layers and layers to this. The tool is simple, but the interpretation requires, for some of you, astrological sophistication, but we'll do our best to show you how. And I'm letting people in the room before we get started. And I have a slideshow that's, because it's comprehensive, and I've added extra material from the last time I taught this a year ago. So it is probably 48 slides or so. I would just get through the content before we have questions. I don't want questions about, hey, what's this mean in my chart? If my sun is Mars in my 8th house, you see that we won't have time for that. But we can certainly ask questions about the principles of the tools if you don't understand them. So there's a difference between, let me read your chart for you for the rest of the class, and the other question is, I don't understand this tool. Can you explain it to me again? So it's one of those things that happens a lot. I understand we're all curious about our chart. I get that. But, there we go. Now, I am looking at, let's see, any of my regulars here, because I'll ask them to maybe help me out with letting people in. I don't even know if Sue was here today. I didn't ask her. Let's see. Hang on. Find Sue if she made it today. And we're still letting more people come on in. That's why we're waiting.
If not, I'm here and I'm on my better computer. I got kicked out last time because I had an old computer that was not functioning well.
Oh, that's good. I was wondering what was going on. Yeah, you need Mel. I love your little collection of oracle cards behind you.
Thank
I'll add you
you.
as a co-host too, just because if I'm in slideshow mode and someone comes in, then I have to exit to let them in. So I'm making you a co-host.
Okay, I'll be happy to do that for you.
Thank you. Yeah. So what a cute little occult corner that you're in.
After moving, I just got this set up, so I'm finally getting my space all ready to go.
Oh, yeah. I recognize some of those decks behind you because I've got them. In the chat, guys, go ahead and say where you're from. I just saw Denmark. Hello from Denmark. Goodness gracious. Nemesis just means divine justice, cosmic comeuppance. Like one's nemesis is someone who's going to put you to task, to try you for something, you know what I mean? But in the deeper meaning, she's like the cosmic kickback of karma or justice that's deserved. So you can't get away with murder, right? Your comeuppance will come through nemesis. So imagine you had the asteroid Nemesis in your house of marriage. Some of your partners could be like your nemesis, but also you have to watch for karmic comeuppance energies or divine justice in there. Portugal, yay, Portugal. Christina, my God, what a beautiful, beautiful country. Absolutely in love with Lisbon. Such a beautiful city. London. Been there many times, don't like it. For some reason, I must have been in the London Tower being punished at some other life. Every time I've gone to London, I feel so heavy-hearted. So it's just a thing. Me and London don't vibe. Me and Rome love each other, though. Okay, so it's starting time, I think. So reminding you, we have a slideshow, we have a Q&A after. This is going to be comprehensive. I'll try not to overwhelm you. The last part of the actual slideshow is we're looking into using the in-law technique or the family technique. It's called the family technique from Indian astrology. It works. And we're using it as well to look at the chart of Erica Kirk. So I want you guys to know that we're going to rectify her chart. And I've already done it, but I want to show you why. But I'm showing you how you can use these find a people in the chart tools to also rectify a chart, meaning we don't have someone's birth time. And now we can use these tools to find someone's birth time to get a general probable birth time worked out. It's not a long slideshow at the end about Erica Kirk, but it does show you some stuff. Hey, Vera, hope the baby's doing well. Saw you in the chat. Okay, Mel, Mel's co-host. Perfect. So as I'm doing my slideshow, when people are coming in late, which is always the case, she'll be able to be, Rome is amazing. Someone just talked about Rome. Are you kidding? Rome is more than amazing. Rome is like, my heart is still in Rome. I saw a shaman, a kahuna years ago from Hawaii, and he said to me, oh my God, Roman senator, lives and lives in Rome. You love Rome. You love wine, right? I go, oh my God, I'm addicted. And then it was so funny because I was saying, like, I think I drink too much wine. He said, oh, no. You just ply your trade with wine in the past, and it's a familiar beverage for you. It's particularly red wine. But the funny part of his story about me being in the Roman story, right? Because I do feel such an affinity that when I had my university electives, where you could, throwaway courses, right? You could just study something that interests you. I was in a psychology program. I picked all these classes about the poetry of Catullus, from Rome, and the ancient Rome history classes. And so, yeah, there you go. Where we often fall in love with cities where we had positive experiences in past lives, or what I would call concurrent lives. Okay, I'm going to make that big. Okay, I believe I'm sharing a slideshow. If I'm not, Mel or anybody mic up. If I don't hear from you guys.
Yeah, we're seeing it. We're good.
Okay, that's good to know. Thank you. Because I tend to have, I'm going to make you guys small, issues lately. So just me and my new MacBook Pro and its upgraded software. All right. Sort of like when you guys came into the room and I started to show you like you saw my messy desktop, right? That just drives me freaking nuts because I used to be able to just jack right into sharing without having to navigate through my front end of my system. It really is weird how that's no longer doable. I need to call Apple for support. Finding the people in your natal chart. Finding the people that you love, the people that you maybe don't love, finding the spouses you've had, finding the grandkids and the kids. And it's such a beautiful tool for understanding the relationships in your life. So we're going to cover a lot of stuff. This is kind of an overview of the types of things we're covering, like planets that are people, like the sun and moon are actually people, end of story. Similarly, although I didn't cover it, so are, we can find the categoric planet for people. I'll address that in a minute. Derived houses to find things like the first, second, third, fourth, fifth marriage, siblings, all of that. Deriving houses is a tool. The lunar tool for finding spouses, and that's wonderful. That's Gemini from India astrology. It translates perfectly into Western tropical astrology. How to find your children and grandkids. Yeah. How to find your in-laws and your parents, mom and dad's family of origin, so that their family that they grew up with. And finally, using asteroids for literal names of people in your chart. Now, it might be fun to add that at the very end to just go scoping around and see if in Erica's chart we can find Charlie, the name Charlie. Right? See, that would be kind of fun to do. But otherwise, my Free Amazings Asteroids course goes into that tool, and it's available under every one of my videos. So we're not going to linger there, but it is a nice tool as well. That's very, very accurate. So finding mom and dad in the chart, and this is the easiest tool of all. However, a lot of people find the question is, what about my stepmom, my stepdad? What about my grandma who raised me? All of that. In that case, what we're going to be talking about with the sun is father, okay, and then the moon will be mother. It's father figures and fathers, mother figures and mothers. So yes, if your grandma raised you, although there is a special planet for her in your chart, but you can also consider that, say you were adopted. Of course, it's not your biological mama alone. The moon would be a parental nurturant figure. The sun would be an authoritative parental figure. So it works that way. Okay. So, but generally speaking, when we look at the sun in the chart, we're looking at somebody's dad, and we can make a kind of statement about their relationship to a father. You can see this chart here is Serena Williams, and the sun is in her house of livelihood, work. What does she do for a living? The job she does. And if you know anything about her, this is a tennis player. And her dad was basically the driver of her career, as well as the career of her sisters. And he definitely got her into her line of work. And there's just no other way to say it. That sun in there gives that element of the role dad played in her life. A lot of times when people have the sun in the second house, which represents the family, that your particular family, we'll get to that later, you will follow in the line of a father figure or a family business. You'll want to lean into that. For example, my sister Nancy has a son in the second house, and my dad was a pharmacist, and she went into pharmacy, she's worked in dispensaries, and she also worked in nursing, so healthcare, medicine, etc. So you'll find a lot of stuff very interesting when you look for the house meaning of where the father sits. Just the house meaning, right? To stop there. You don't have to worry about anything else. The meaning of the 10th house, find the meaning of the house, see the father there. Vladimir Putin's mom, mysterious story with his mom, hidden mom, adopted, given up. No one knows who his mom really is. And he's got the moon in the 8th house, the hidden mother, the secretive mother, right? So looking for where your moon goes is your, sun and moon goes is where your parent sits in your chart, or the one who raised you. And you'll notice in that case that you can understand the relationship you have to your mom or your dad based on the house in which the sun and moon will fall. We'll get to the moon in a minute. The quality of the moon, imagine your moon is fallen or it's in detriment. Maybe it's in exile, which is a bad place for the moon in Capricorn. That would be a stoic mother, a colder mother, the energy of the way the mother operates, more Saturnian, right? So keep in mind, of course, for those who know astrology, looking at the sign, looking at the dignity of the planet, looking at the house of the parent, and finally, the relationship of the parent by angle. Is the parent squaring your ascendant? Is a parent in the 10th house or the 4th house, or opposing your ascendant in the 7th house? That will inform difficult relationships with the parent. Now, one thing to say is that the sun in the 7th house or the moon in the 7th house, father and mother, makes for difficult circumstances for most people's marriages, because you're working through the unprocessed father and mother material in the house of marriage. It's like you put your parent in a spousal house, right? It's pretty well a difficult placement. So mama, her mother is in her 5th house. We're just using Serena Williams, one person's chart. Now, the mother was extraordinarily mother. Okay, she had to support 7 people, family of 7. She was credited by Serena as the matriarch. And there's a quality of anyone's moon in the 5th house that at some point in your life, if mama is in the 4th house, you might have to mother your mother. Right? Either growing up, she's needing your help, or maybe she gets old and you have to mother your mother. So it's like, okay, in the house of children is my mother, but her mother was also this huge matriarchal mama. All right. So, and I'm not reading this slide to you at this point because this is a very long, comprehensive course. You got the slides after. I just give credence to it with evidence in the story of the slide. So we get this kind of vibe here. We can use it to understand our parents more deeply. Even if they're past, we can understand our relationship to them. Now, just as a general principle, mom or dad in the 12th house, past lives together, right? Mom or dad in the 8th house, some kind of, maybe one of the parents dies early, or maybe there's a real hidden factor, a secret that the parent has. Moon in the 4th house, great, because that's the natural house of the mother, where the 10th house is the natural house of the father. So, but when sun is in the 4th house, it's a hardship. That would be dad in the house of the home. When moon is in the 10th house, well, it's not necessarily a hardship. It's your mother in the 10th house of career. Maybe she Your moon's in the 10th house. Maybe your mama wore the pants in the family, right? My son's born with his moon in the 10th house. His dad was traveling so much as a child that I was like a single mother. Therefore, he looks at me as the boss, right? In his childhood years, rather than the mama who's like, playing the soft feminine energy, where I was in charge of everything for him. So look at those kinds of things, make sense of your chart. It's kind of nice to do that. Siblings in our chart, okay? It's easy and it's useful. The general house of siblings as a general category is the 3rd house. But then there's specifically ways to parse that into more nuance. So if you want to see this chart like I've got for you here, this is how to find your older siblings, right? The 11th house is the sibling one above you. The 9th house is 2 older than you. The 7th house is 3 older, and on we go, and on we go, and on we go. It's a simple principle of 3rd house from the house, right? So you're the ascendant. This technique works best for ascendant, not rising sign, not sun signs. So you're the rising sign, you're the ascendant, you're you in the simulation. 3 houses below you, houses 1, 2, 3, 3rd house down, is siblings categorically and generally as a what do you call it? Like a one size fits all. Fine. But if you start tracking 3rd house from the 3rd house and 3rd house from your upwards towards your 11th house, you start to be able to spread the siblings out by birth order. So we don't just go that your 11th house is a house of the sibling one older, which it is, which is wonderful. I mean, maybe you have Pluto Mars conjunct there and you hate your older sibling and there's intensity in that relationship. Fine. You can make a story. But you look as well to the ruling planet of the house, which is probably not in the house. And you get a derivative understanding of your sibling one older. What sign is that planet in? What house is the ruling planet of the 11th house in? What angles does that planet make to your ascendant or to other planets in your chart to understand the nature of the relationship to that sibling? Secondarily, it's great for timing markers. Once you know the planet, certainly the house, but secondarily the planet that represents the siblings, say 1 older, 2 older, 3 older, you simply can use that planet as a marker for events in life. There's an eclipse on Mercury, which represents the sibling 1 older. Oh, whoa. There can be developments in your relationship to the sibling that are extremely important. Okay. It'll impact the sibling relationship. Sometimes it even impacts the sibling. You could say, okay, hey, older sis, there's an eclipse to my Mercury and your Mercury in my chart. I bet you're going to have a massive amount of destined change this year. Right? You can actually by proxy, read the chart of a sibling. Just by the nature of the energies that are hitting that planet in your chart, it literally often translates to events in the life of the sibling as well. Okay, and the same thing goes for the moon and the sun. You have an eclipse to your moon or sun. That's your mom or your dad. Right, you're going to find that likely they're going to have massive catalytic change. Oh my God, Saturn is crossing my moon. Your mom's depressed. Saturn is crossing my son. My dad retired or something. So there's a way to read the lives of your people, right? By looking at the planet that represents them and what goes on. And do you know how I said planets are people when we talked about sun and moon? Venus rules friendships that are sisterly, feminine friends, and Mars rules brothers. Okay, just as a category, and Jupiter rules the concept of children, just children. So Jupiter can represent children as a principle, right? Which is why when Jupiter goes to people's 4th house, there's more children in the home. And Mars rules brothers and Venus rules sisters. So you can use those general categories as well as the specific tools we're learning today. And the younger siblings is just reverse the order, down the chart in zodiacal order. Ruler of the 3rd house is the closest youngest sibling by age, and you go all the way through. The 5th house is the second youngest one below you, and the 7th house is your third born sibling, not child. So you just kind of parse the story, right? And it's simple, and you're going to get the slides. You could just print out this content and stick it on your table, but or your desk. But you just learn the tool. You don't need this printout. You just keep counting 3 houses down, right? My first house. 1, 2, 3. I'm in the 3rd house, firstborn, younger sibling, the younger sibling below me. below me, and go down 3, 4, 5, 2 younger than me. And then we go from the 5th house, go 5, 6, 7, 3 younger than me. All right. So it's pretty cool. I have 2 sisters younger than me. It's interesting that both my younger sisters fall into my 3rd house. What is the 3rd house? Well, it's travel. Have I done a lot of my life with both my siblings? Travel. We love to travel together and make big birthday travel events and go meet in some exotic location. So you see, it's literal. It's a very literal story. Very literal. Oh, I should have explained this. The slide's a little bit out of order, but you're always the ascendant, and we're looking at above you for older and going around, and below you for younger. So everything I said has already been described by this slide. So here you go. I like to look at these guys because there's so many of them. This is the tennis family, the Williams, Serena, and Venus. And there's the mama in the middle of the picture, this broodmare mom who did everything to be the best mom for all the kids, like the Rock of Gibraltar, according to Serena. Okay. So Serena Williams, the famous tennis player, and her sister Venus Williams, okay, is an interesting narrative. Serena is in the 1st house. This is her chart. So she is that Taurus rising character in the sky here. And if you were to then look for her sibling, right, which is Venus, we would go down and we would say, because Venus is the youngest sibling of 5 female children growing up in the same house. Now, if you have stepkids, stepbrothers and sisters, and you grow up in the same house as those children, so it's like the Brady Bunch, you're going to use the step people as real siblings as well. That's different than your dad has a brood of kids somewhere else and nobody ever meets each other. That's not it. It's growing up in a familial, interconnected relationship. Okay. So anyway, that's how we would do that. So because we are looking at Venus Williams, she is the ruler of the 11th house. This was a part of a larger slideshow. You just have to trust me on that one because she must be the youngest of the 5. So I just had gone around from the bottom of the chart all the way around the circle. So the ruler of the 11th house is Pisces, right? Jupiter. That's the 11th house. That's a Pisces symbol on the top of the sky in the 11th house. That makes the planet Jupiter the sibling. Serena's sibling, the other tennis player, is Jupiter in her chart. And you can see that Jupiter is sitting in Libra in the 6th house of work. They worked together. They were on the tennis courts traveling. They were competitors and allies in tennis. Okay. They were co-workers in the same field. It's also a house of karmic relationships. And you can make an argument, therefore, that karmic relationships, when family bundles like that happen, there's a lot of, sense that, oh my God, my younger siblings in my 6th house, it must be a deeply karmic relationship. Second oldest sister is named Isha. So if you go up to the second oldest, we're always looking at the 9th house. The 11th house is 1 above. 9th house is 2 older, right? So we do the 9th house ruler. The ruler of the 9th house, of course, is Saturn. That's a Capricorn 9th house. Saturn is the planet that is that sibling, but it's the house of law, right? The 9th house is courts, judges, and legal matters. It's no surprise that Isha is an attorney, right? Because she's connected to 9th house matters. And she also falls into that 6th house with her other sister, Venus. Well, now we get to see how these are siblings and they're bundled together in a very karmic storyline, but also Isha was working with Serena in her business as a part of the team. The third oldest sister is Lindrea. And to get to the third oldest, we go 1 above is the 11th house, 2 older is the 9th house, 3 older is the 7th house. 7th house is Scorpionic. Scorpio is ruled by Mars. Mars is in the 4th house. So this is the third oldest sister, Lindrea, in Mars' 4th house position. And it could indicate, of course, by the way, some tension with that sibling relative to the others because it squares her ascendant. So we don't know. I'm not going to go into the whole story, but there's just that. And also Mars, the sibling Lindrea, right, is talking to Venus the goddess of fashion. It is a square, but there is a conversation, and Mars rules Scorpio. And this was a sibling who was extremely into arts, fashion, especially fashion. She was a costumer in the movie industry. So, and designer and merchandiser of fashion. So we see that this is kind of showing us the nature of the sibling, independent of how the siblings interact, which I would suggest there were fights in the house with this sibling because it's Mars. Okay. She's almost like the outlier, the black sheep, in that she's not bundled with, Isha and Venus. Alrighty. So I think they probably had a few fights in their relationship. The very oldest sister, Yetunde, is here. She was a nurse by profession. As we continue to climb through the sky, we were 7th house, and now we're in the 5th house, 3 from the 7th. We get to the next sister, going up, going backwards from the ascendant. And so when we look at the possibility of what this means, the 5th house is Yetunde. It is the house of, it belongs to Mercury, right? Mercury's the ruler. You'll see Mercury in the 6th house of work. Again, you see like a soul tribe here to me, right? The outlier was the last one, Lynandrea, whatever. And so we can see that everybody's connected in the same place. It's kind of weird, actually. All right. The moon is nurturing and caretaking energy. The 5th house could indicate that sister might have been a real nurturer or caretaker. And Virgo is a sign of health, and she was a nurse, right? She worked as an assistant for Serena as well as for Venus. So she was like, in the office with them, so to speak, right? And the second oldest sister, the ruler of the 9th, the lawyer, right, is also in that 6th house. You see what a team those sisters were. It's incredible. They were all working together in some capacity, except for the costumer, the outlier, Mars. And Yetunde died in 2003 at 31 years old. She was killed by a stray bullet in a dangerous neighborhood, right, Compton. So that's an interesting thing. This was from a longer slideshow, but she was in the 8th house of death, right? 31 years old puts you into your 8th house of profection, age of death. And in Serena's chart, this sibling, which is Mercury, is conjunct Pluto, the planet of death. You'll see that Pluto in Libra is conjunct Mercury, that sibling, indicating death and sibling as a narrative, of some kind. And of course, all siblings will die at some point, but Pluto will be something tragic or something really traumatic, right? So now you can see when you look at your siblings in the chart, what the vibe is, who you're closer to, like the siblings who trine you, they're 120 degrees away, or, the siblings that sextile you 2 houses away, 60 degrees away. You're probably going to get along as a general principle very well, rather than a sibling in your 10th, 4th, or 7th, which are square and oppositional energies to your ascendant. And it's funny, when Yetunde was killed, Serena had entered her 12th house age, which is hospitals, of course, but also ruled by Mars, because it's Aries 12th house, the planet of gunfire and murder. And Mars is in her 4th house. It is sextiling the sibling who died, which is just interesting, because it just shows you when it comes to Mars and Pluto, sextiles don't always show up as positive, because it's like murder or homicide or violent death stories, right? Also, I wonder about Mercury at the 29th degree. That's it's an intensely karmic degree. All right. So, and it's at the bending of the nodes of fate in the chart of Serena Williams. So there's a fated, destined, karmic, climactic energy in her relationship to that sibling. And if she was to write a book, she probably has, or if we ever got an autobiography from Serena, we'll find a story that when her sister was killed, it changed her life, right? Oh, maybe I have that in the slide. I do. I would like to practice what I preach and teach. Okay. Olympia, I want to forgive him. Okay. Wait. I don't know what that quote is there for. That's her daughter. Okay, let's go to the bottom quote. In 2016, Serena Williams and Venus Williams honored their late sister by founding the Yetunde Price Resource Center, a nonprofit that collaborates with other organizations to offer healing around trauma-informed programs of victims of violence, of course. So it became like a destined, fated legacy move in Serena's life, that she was going to do something, sort of like Mothers Against Drunk Driving, to find some way to take the poison of her sister's death and make it into a medicine for the world. So there you go. And finally, she has a younger brother named Dylan, and he was born in 2012 to the biological dad. Okay, so this is not growing up with this kid, but I think it's interesting because a lot of us have extended family to try to figure it out, step kids, step everything. So born in August of 2012 to her dad, Richard Williams, and his brand new wife. The first younger sibling is going to be the third house, right? Younger than her, one sibling, one younger than her. And its ruler, and in the case, that's the moon. Right, the moon is the ruler of that house, right? So we can go, okay, this younger brother is connected to the moon in the fifth house, and it's the house of children. And it's probable that Serena, because when I made this slide 2 years ago, maybe the kid was I don't know how old, maybe 12. It's likely Serena will be a parent to her half brother, that she'll be very motherly or nurturant toward him, like you would like having a kid late in life. Okay. So to recap, we found the parents in the chart, sun and moon. Categorically, you can use Venus for sisters, Mars for brothers, and Jupiter for the category of children as a concept. We covered how to track siblings older and younger by counting 3 around the wheel from the ascendant. By counting above the ascendant, that direction around the wheel is going to bring you the olders, and below your ascendant, starting down to the third house, is going to give you the youngers. The real most important part of that is really to find the planet that represents the sibling. Okay. So the third method is called derived marriage houses. Now, there's 2 techniques. I'm using the one that's not cultural. Why? Because I'm not married to my husband who dies and then I get passed on to his brother, right? That's an Indian cultural tradition. There's another technique that's derived houses, and it works better because we don't do that in our culture. We don't pass the widow off, or the widower off, or whatever, to the family of origin, to the brothers and we just don't do that. So people get on my case sometimes in YouTube land. I'm going, guys, that technique doesn't work in the Western culture. We use the derived houses technique that's very clean and it works. Okay. So your 7th house is your first marriage. It always is. It's like it represents the qualities of the first marriage, the sign, planets in that house, the ruling planet of that house. But remember how I said to you in the beginning that siblings is categorically the third house. Well, it is. And so basically, the ruling planet of your third house is the categorical siblings planet as a general meaning. Like I'm an Aries third house. So therefore, Mars is the nature of siblings in general in my money house. My sister Nancy works for me. So there's exactly where the money is in. My other sister is legally blind, and it's very probable I'll be supporting her at some point in her elder years. So my sibling planet is about a money story, right? In some fundamental way. Mars, money, second house. Similarly, the marriage house, the 7th house, is categorically marriage. The planet that rules your 7th house is categorically your marriage planet. And it never changes. So I'm an Aquarius rising. That means I have a Leo 7th house. The sun is categorically the planet that represents my approach to marriage as a principle, right? Where that planet sits, the sign that planet is in, etc. For example, my marriage planet, the sun, is in the travel house, the 3rd house. There's not one long-term committed love relationship that I've been in where one of the essential features is traveling together, right? So once you understand that that's fine, and that the 7th house and its planetary placements in there, but more importantly, the planetary ruler of your 7th house, you have to know your rulerships, guys. This is an intermediate level understanding of this conversation. That means that the 7th house doubles down as first marriage partner, right? The 7th house is your first marriage partnerships. The planetary ruler of the 7th house speaks to some of the nature of the first relationship. Okay. So as well as just generally will cover all relationships you're ever going to be in. And when I say marriage, cohabitational, long-term, monogamous, committed, right? Common law, whatever. It doesn't have to be a legal marriage. It's duration, it's proximity, it's intensity. We all know what it feels like to say it was like a marriage. If you've been in it, If it wasn't, it was like, we dated on and off for 2 years. It's probably not going to count as a marriage. The second house is your second marriage. The third house is your ninth marriage. The fourth house is your fourth marriage. Okay. We're just counting 7 houses. From the 7th house, we're counting 8 houses around the wheel. All right. So I'm in my 7th house and I start counting around the wheel and I get to count. I get 7 houses from my 7th house. This is my first house, right? 8 houses from my 7th house is my second house. And so it's derived houses. All right. So this is a technique and it works. So often in my YouTube channel, I'm always going, the 9th house is the third marriage. And people are like, why? So now you know why. I find that the tools, because I got a better technique, the Gemini technique is more accurate, but I find this tool works. It's useful. You're going to apply it just like we did with everything else. You're going to look at, what's the ruler of the second house? What planet rules it? That will describe the quality of the partner that you're going to be involved with. So my second house is Pisces and my second marriage partner is Jupiter. So it's not just the quality of Jupiter, it's the quality of Jupiter in my natal chart. I would parse it. You know what I'm saying? I would make sense of it. And Jupiter's in my second house. So it's about money. It's a money planet, a wealth and prosperity planet in a house of money and wealth and prosperity. And there's qualities of my second marriage that were built on money, right? And the demise of the relationship was built on money in some ways as well. A lot of it was about money, not me. I wasn't like, he wasn't rich and I was poor. It wasn't that story, but I'm not going to go into it now, but there was a lot of money stories in that relationship. And then, third marriage, you just go around the wheel. Like I have a Libra 9th house. So my 9th house is ruled by Venus. Where does Venus sit in my chart, guys? In my 4th house in Taurus. What is the 4th house? For those of you who study with me, it's your end of life house. It's your dying days. It's a house where you exit, where you go gently into that good night. Clearly, my third long-term partner, I haven't had one yet. To call a marriage, right? A real marriage will likely be somebody I'm going to nest into my dying days with. And I'm being very strict about this when I call it marriages, because the technique from the 7th house is got to be very much like a marriage. We spent 10 years living together. We're not talking about dating. The Gemini technique is a little bit more flexible. This one is pretty strict. Okay. So there you go. And you can understand your exes a little bit better and the nature of what the relationship was really for. Imagine that, you find out that your second marriage partner's Mercury conjunct your South Node of past lives, right? End of story. You had a karmic contract. It's that kind of stuff. This technique is a little bit more adaptable for those relationships that aren't like a marriage, right? Because the archetype of that 7th house is a traditional marital relationship. And when we derive houses from it, we mean a traditional marital relationship. Again, duration, probably cohabitation, shared resources, shared money, the things we consider marital. However, the Gemini tool that I'm about to describe, which is alarmingly accurate, can be often used to describe, well, we only were together for 3 years, but it rocked my world. Or we were together for a year, but I got pregnant with this person. We had a kid. We dated for 8 years, but we never lived together. So there's a quality of this tool where you really can find the people in your chart by asking yourself questions to know whether to count that person or not. I've got a funny story about that in my own life. Maybe I'll have time to share it. So the lunar technique, your first marriage partner, right? In this lunar technique, Gemini, it's called a technique. And I know there's a lot of content here and it may be overwhelming, but you're going to get a toolkit you can use as you learn astrology. Like you can have this slideshow, for example, you could print it out. You could cut up the pieces of paper that are more like descriptive, because it literally is a comprehensive toolkit about finding people in the chart. So I could do a whole class on one of these techniques, but I wanted to get them all in one place for you guys. So the lunar technique from Gemini is this. You're counting from the moon. The moon is being treated like an ascendant. Okay. And you probably say, why would I treat the moon like an ascendant? Because the moon is your mind body complex. It's how you feel about life. It's how you think about life. It's your emotional and mental content of your reality. It reflects the light of the sun, which is your soul. It reflects the material and materia of life, the nuts and bolts of life, like the table is real. The moon is reflecting the light of the solar energy in the world and in our own sun, our own natal sun, and making it into the material realm. It's a Plato's cave, right? They're standing there and they don't realize they're shackled and they see these moving figures and they don't realize that it's a shadow of reality. Like they're looking at a projection from the shadows of the fire. So they think it's something real, but it's not a shadow. So the moon is like the shadow reflection of a deeper spiritual truth. Yet we live in a matrix or a simulation, and the moon is about that simulated reality. So, of course, the moon is really a powerful part of our everyday real life. So we're going to go with that because the Indians figured it out. Vedic astrology got it right. The lunar technique. Your first marriage partner is a ruler of the house or sign that is directly opposite your lunation, your moon. This is why knowing a correct birth time is important, not only from the other techniques we've learned, but in this case, don't forget the moon changes signs every 2.5 days. So when someone doesn't have a birth time and say the moon is getting ready like at noon on October 14th, halfway through the day, it's going to change signs. You're going to need to know a pretty clean birth time for this tool. Your first marriage partner is a ruler of the house, 7 away, directly opposite the moon. Your second marriage partner is a ruler of the house/sign, second from the moon in zodiacal order, right? But if you think about that, I want you to close your eyes. I want you to visualize a chart right now with me, okay? I want you to close your eyes and visualize a chart. I want you to picture that your moon is in the first house, just for fun. And across the way, the 7th house. Right. So your moon is in Aries, it's in the first house, and there's Libra in the 7th house. And then, of course, that Libra means Venus, and your first long-term marriage type partnership is the planet Venus in your chart. But if I wasn't just to tell you to look to the 2nd house, right? I'd look to the 2nd house from the 1st house where the moon is. I could say count from the 7th house. Put your finger on the 7th house and count around the wheel. And that means you're 8 houses from the 7th. It's like the same derived tool we use for the marriage house. And I'm just using it like 1st house, 7th house. It could be your moon's in the 8th house. And then you're looking to the 2nd house for your first partner. So, it's just, you have to put your finger on the chart and count around. But anyway, simple technique. Second marriage partner will be the ruler of the house, 2nd from the moon. Third marriage partner is a ruler of the house 9 from the moon in zodiacal order. This is a shortcut way to do it. Okay. The 4th marriage partner is a ruler of the house 4th from the moon, and you count around the wheel. And every time I teach this, I don't know if I'm going to have a slide for it. I know people get confused. So let me just say it's not confusing. It's just counting. Serena Williams has a first husband, current husband. When I did this slide, I think they're still together. So I take a look at her lunation, which is the moon in Virgo in her 5th house. And I go across the way to her 11th house, 180 degrees away, like a de facto 7th house from the moon. And it is Jupiter. That makes her partner Jupiter. Okay. Jupiter is bundled into the family unit, the karmic relationship family unit, right? So there's a sense that he's team Serena's soul pod with her siblings of some possibility. It means they could work together, basically, as well. When your spouse falls in the 6th or the 10th house, you might be professionally aligned, for example. All right. So she retired in 22, and she's working with her husband in joint ventures, and he's the founder of Reddit. And so it's exactly what it looks like. And Jupiter, Pluto, because he's with Pluto, right? Her husband's with Pluto. That's a wealth yoga. That's a Warren Buffett wealth yoga, right? Wealth yogas are Venus, Pluto, Jupiter, Pluto. So union yoga, the planets are together. So he's extraordinarily wealthy. Now, imagine that they didn't stay together, right? And something happened and they broke up. Then we look at her moon and we would say, okay, Libra, right? The 2nd house from the lunation. But if we didn't make it, that's a shortcut. If we didn't do that, we take her lunation in the 5th house, And we count from the fifth house. And we count like this. Fifth house is 1, sixth house is 2, seventh house is 3, eighth house is 4, ninth house is 5, 10th house is 6, 11th house is 7. Oh, no, sorry, got that wrong. That's the first technique. Then we count from Jupiter's place. We count from the 7th house and we start counting around the wheel. So we go to the 11th house, which is Pisces, which is her first husband, and we put our finger on there and we count from her 11th house. She's in, the 11th house, 1, the 12th house is 2, the first house is 3, the second house is 4, the third house is 5, the fourth house is 6, the fifth house is 7, and the 8th house is 6, the 6th house, which is Libra. So don't forget, we start to count by 8, all right, around the wheel from the spouse's last house. So her next spouse, if she has one, will be Venus. Venus is Scorpio. Okay. Oh, the infidelity risk. This is this couple. Marriage is not bliss. She admitted with a laugh when she was asked what was the most surprising thing she learned about being married. And she said, but it can be if you work at it. Okay. Marriage can be bliss if you work at it. So she added that, during that video that a deal breaker is infidelity. And I think I put that in there because if I go back to Jupiter in her chart, there was a reason I picked that out. I'm trying to remember. This was a different slideshow. I blended different slideshows together because I was also teaching other tools. Where did I get the infidelity in the chart? Hopefully I'll explain it. There was something about infidelity in there. Oh, no, that would be a second marriage partner. Okay, so if she went into a second marriage partnership, right, out of her partner with her husband, you can see her Venus is squaring Mars, right? Mars is in the 4th house, squaring Venus in the 7th. That's an infidelity marker. Venus square, if you're born with it, like she is, she should experience an infidelity at some point in her life, being betrayed, or maybe she could be the one betraying. And it doesn't mean you're always going to have that because you're born with that square. It does not mean that, but it is known to be an indicator of those stories of love betrayals and infidelities happening. So it would put the next partner, the Venus person, in the kind of storyline where she could meet them and betray her husband, right? Have a side hustle affair, or she gets into that relationship and then she's betrayed. But anyway, that's why I had that there. Yeah, I counted around the wheel for you. We did that slide already. Okay. I'm just going to move on. Okay. The kids are easy and the kids are fun. I think when you're a parent, this is a fun exercise because not only will you understand why your kid and you get along or don't get along, but you'll also be able to use the planet that represents your children as a canary in the coal mine, early warning system about the lives of your children, right? Just like I said, if the moon is your mom and then there's an eclipse on the moon, you're going to be kind of telling your mom like, okay, some major shifts happening in your life, mom. Same thing. When you know the planet that represents a child and there's a major change to that planet in your chart, it's a proxy, right? A collateral energy to your child. Funny how that works. It does work that way. You can make predictions about your kids based on who they are in your chart as well. So the firstborn house. Okay, so just like I told you guys, the 7th house is categorically marriage and the 3rd house is categorically siblings. Categorically, the 5th house is children, your children. So the 5th house ruler is the planet not only represents the firstborn child, but also represents the way you relate to children. So often when I'm talking to women or men, and I see that the ruler in my client base, and I see that the ruler of the 5th house is, say, in aversion to the house of children. Inversion meaning in one of the houses next door, before or after the 5th house, the 4th or the 6th, or in aversion by being in the 12th house or the 10th house. I will say it looks like you're ambivalent about having kids. And they go, oh my God, I am. I don't think I ever want them. Or if they're older and they've already, they're in their 50s or 60s, they say, it looks like you might have chosen not to have kids, or if you were really unsure about it. And you'll find that that's very true. So you can use the ruling planet of the 5th house as a general predictor of your own sky or a friend's sky about what their relationship to the idea of having children is, right? Obviously, if the ruler of the 5th house is in the 10th house of career, it's a preoccupation with career, at probably in aversion to the 5th house, 150 degrees away, at the expense of choosing children. Okay. Once you know that simple concept means your fifth house ruler means children categorically, one way or the other. And then we move into the specificity of it all. And we just move around the wheel. And we do it this way. Your firstborn child is a ruler of the fifth house. Your secondborn child is a ruler of the seventh. And your thirdborn child is a ruler of the ninth. And your fourthborn child is a ruler of the 11th. And if you're Catholic, you can keep circling the wheel. Now, the good question you would ask me at this time is why? Because it's the sibling storyline. Firstborn child is the fifth house. And then you go fifth, sixth, seventh. That's the sibling for that child. Right? It's the sibling 3 away. And then you go from the seventh house and you go 3 away, 7, 8, 9. It's the sibling underneath the second child. Therefore, they become your children, but you're deriving meaning from siblingness, right? That's how that technique is created. It's extremely accurate. Okay. There you go. These are your children. I am not sure that it works when you do the Brady Bunch. Okay, because this is a house of procreation and conception that we start when the fifth house is activated. And if you are not the procreative unit, mom and dad, for the children, or they just come flooding into the house, I'm not sure it really works. I haven't been able to determine that it does. So I just say these are your children. All right, forget the steppies and stuff. That's complicated. You might be able to go to find your stepchildren. For this is for the advanced students, okay? This is for like Vera and Sinette, who'll watch the replay, and Stephen, if he's here. If you probably were married to some person and then their children came to live with you, then what you might be able to do is to use maybe the Gemini tool to find that spouse in the chart, right? And then from that placement, count 5 houses from that spouse, the planet that represents them, because that would represent their children, right? The ruler 5 houses from your spouse planet, like your second husband, right? With his brood of kids, right? So it's like my second husband is Mercury in my second house. And I count 5 houses from the second, right? 2, 3, second house, third house, fourth house, fifth house, sixth house. The ruler of my sixth house, 5 houses from my second, would represent the children of my spouse. So there's a tool for you. You could even do it the way we did, keep going around, like the younger one, the next one younger in the spouse's life, but just categorically, 5 houses from the planet that represents the spouse could work. And another tool for the advanced students is you could take the marital houses too. You could go like, my second marriage is my second house. And then counting 5 houses from the second would be the pre-existing kids of my second spouse. So this requires research. This requires testing these tools on lots of people. So this is where you get to be a research astrologer. Okay, so Serena Williams is a first child daughter was Alexis Olympia. What a great name, Alexis Olympia. Girl, I love that name. Her first child is Alexis Olympia. Mercury is the ruler of her 5th house. That's our house of children in general, plus her firstborn child, right? So we think, okay, well, her little girl is Mercury in the chart. We can say much about that, right? Mercury is a planet that will represent the child. Isn't it interesting that Mercury is a planet that represented her sister Yetunde as well, who passed away? I find that fascinating. It's possible that Yetunde was reincarnated. Why? Because Yetunde was dead when she had her baby. So I would make a case, if I was her astrologer, that I bet your little girl is your sister that you love so much who was shot. And she goes, oh my God, I can't believe you said that, because she has all the characteristics of my sister. Alrighty. Now, when she was giving birth, there was a near-death experience kind of vibe going on. The baby's heart rate was accelerated. They had to do an emergency C-section. And then Serena had a life-threatening pulmonary embolism. What is the 6th house? It's a house of sickness. What's Pluto? Death. Pluto Mercury killed her sister. Pluto Mercury almost caused a problem to her life or her daughter's life in birth. In other words, more evidence in my mind. It's almost like the soul of Yetunde went out with a trauma, zipped back into her sister's womb. And there was kind of like a kind of echo trauma around it again, going out with it. The soul, Yutunde, goes out with trauma and comes in with trauma. Now, I would really wish I was the astrologer for Serena Williams, because it could help her really understand the deeper layers of meaning in her relationship to her daughter. Her second child is Adira River. I love the creativity in these names. And the second-born child, is the seventh house ruler, because we're going 3 houses from the first one, the younger sibling energy. And that's Mars. And we can say, well, Mars is in the 4th house, squaring her first house. And it's going to take a lot of energy, to raise this kid, because this kid's going to be willful and combative. It's also the same planet as one of her sisters, Lynandra, who was the outlier sibling, who didn't work with the family team and had her own costuming business and really had nothing to do with the other siblings in the 6th house. So you could say that the kid's going to be a bit of an outlier and probably a handful. This is going to be the kid that she's going to have to say terrible twos were horrendous, This is the family. That's the little new baby. And well, this is a 2-year-old slide, but whatever. But really darling little girl too, Olympia. All right. So remember, I'm giving you an encyclopedic knowledge of the tools. And you have this forever to go back and reference. Method 5, how to find your grandparents. Okay. The simple method is this. There's lots of methods. The simple method is the mother's mother, right? The 4th house is the house of the mother. That's a general principle. And so then you can count 4 houses from the 4th. That means it's mother's mother, right? You want to find mother's father. You can go 10 houses from the 4th. Why? Because if you were to think about what the 10th house means, it means father. So you want to find your mother's father, which is your grandparent. Take the 4th house and go around 10 to the 10th house from the 4th house. Just do it. Start counting. Now that means that energy, which will be your first house, you're looking for the ruling planet of that house to represent that mother's father or your matrilineal granddad. Okay. Father's mother is 4th house from the 10th. Why? Because your dad is the 10th house, and 4 houses later is his mother house. So and you look to the ruling planet to represent your patrilineal grandmother, your patrilineal grandfather, right? You're going to take it 10th house from the 10th house. Your dad is the 10th house. His dad is 10 houses away. It's that simple. Now, you could find great-grandparents, too, by continuing with the process, right? Father's father, 10th house from the 10th house. Your great-grandfather, 10th house from that house. And you just keep going 10 houses around the wheel and start finding all the upline. Now, this is a very simple tool, because there's more complicated tools. We're not going to do them, that go into driving from the planetary ruler rather than the houses. This tool is simple. This tool works. This is rudimentary but accurate. Okay, so I say use it to find your grandparents. Same with grandkids. The house of grandchildren is categorically the 9th house. So now you remember the house of siblings, categorically 3rd, house of marriage, categorically 7th, house of children, categorically 5th. And the ruling planet of those houses has meaning, as this is how I relate to children, marriage, siblings, and now grandkids. The ruling planet of your 9th house, find it in your chart. It's probably not in the 9th house. Will give you indications of the role grandchildren will play in your life as a high concept, just like me and grandchildren. This is how we roll, right? Second of all, when we want to find out where the whole story goes, so the house of grandchildren, so why would we use this? Like, why would the 9th house be? Because I want you to conceptually get it, right? Why? Because your children are in the 5th house, and their children will be 5 away, categorically speaking. 5 away, categorically speaking. If you are an advanced student, there are other methods. I'm not going to teach them here, but this technique is useful because it is possible to find other derivatives. The 9th house and its ruler, right, grandchildren as a principle. So your 5th house from the 5th house. Now, if you want to take it a layer later, the 3rd house from your 9th house, right, which is your 11th, will be the sibling of your firstborn grandchild. So in other words, here comes my firstborn grandchild. She's amazing. I can't believe how amazing is. She's going to have a sibling at some point, isn't she? So when you're in the ninth house, that's just her, the cusp ruler of the ninth house, the place of the first grandchild. But then when she gets a younger sibling born to her, you just count 1, 2, 3 away, 9, 10, and 11. And that makes the ruler of the 11th house, right? The ruler of the 11th house, your second born grandchild. Now, it's tricky because I'm talking about your daughter having kids. Because it's going to be the sibling of the next one. And that's, like, say you have multiple children having multiple children. That's where it gets complicated. But as a principle, that's a technique. You could probably apply it to just say second born grandchild. But I usually apply it more specifically to your daughter's having kids. And here's her firstborn, your first grandchild from her, second born, third born, going around the wheel. Okay. There is another technique. It's too complicated. I'm not going to go into it. To actually find the specific grandchild of each of your children. This is more of a general principle, but it works. If you always wondered if you're going to have grandchildren, sometimes I get in a client session and somebody's like, I don't think I'm ever going to have babies. I'm 39 and past my time. And then I look at their house of grandchildren and it's fucking chock-a-block with action. And it looks really good, like Jupiter in the house of grandchildren. I'm going, I don't know about that. It looks like you're having grandchildren. So somewhere you're getting some grandchildren. And sometimes I'll say, maybe, you're going to marry someone with lots of grandchildren, but more importantly, maybe you're still not done having kids. So will you have grandchildren? So you look to the ruling planet. First of all, you look at the condition of what's going on in the ninth house. Like I said, maybe Jupiter, the god of children, is in the ninth house, the house of grandchildren. You look to those basic things, right? But there's a planetary ruler that just represents grandchildren in your chart. And you want to take that chart ruler and look at where it sits in your chart. And you want to ask yourself, can it witness the ninth house? So for example, imagine your planetary ruler of the ninth house was in the eighth house. It's an aversion, cannot witness particularly well the ninth house or the 10th house, or in the second house or in the fourth house. Those are houses of aversion to the house of grandchildren. If the ruling planet of the house of grandchildren can't even witness the house of grandchildren, it's quite possible you're not going to have any grandkids. Doesn't mean you don't have kids. You might not have grandkids. Is the ruler of the ninth house aspecting the moon, which represents fertility and children and parenting and nurturing? Is the ruler of the ninth house aspecting Venus or Jupiter? These are planets, especially Jupiter, children and fertility. Is the ruler of your ninth house in any debility, like conjunct a malefic or under the beams of the sun, anything that would look harmful to that particular planet? And do the planets that represent your children even witness this ninth house? Like, oh yeah, my daughter, the planet that represents my second born child is in the fifth house, trining the house of grandchildren. So there's all kinds of nuance to figure out if you're going to have grandkids or not. These are just some of the ways to look. This is my chart. So my grandchildren are the ninth house, Libra, and I have my ruler in aversion, and that could say to me, I may not have grandchildren. Who knows, right? I don't think that's true, so I'm not going to rely on that. You see what I mean? In fact, with Venus in the fourth house, I could have grandchildren around me at the end of my life, be surrounded by my grandkids. Because I have a Saturn square to Venus. Everything about Venus is in delay. Everything's delayed. It means I'll probably live long because that's what Saturn square Venus would do in this chart. But it also means, which reflects my palm readings, but it also means that perhaps it just means grandchildren later in life. Well, my God, I'm 63. I don't have grandkids. My son's waiting. Now he's going to start trying. I had kids later in life as well, my second born. So it just kind of says probably later in life I'll have grandchildren. And the dignity of the ruler of the ninth house being in her home kingdom is an auspicious thing. I have to now be an empiricist, which means a scientist of my chart, and study it and think about it and ask myself what I think this is going to be. Remember, I told you, does the ruler of your ninth house have any hookups with the moon or Jupiter or Venus? Well, Venus is hooked up to Jupiter in a sextile. So the god of children is flowing to the god of grandchildren in a positive way. In fact, I will probably have more than one grandchild based on the Jupiter sextile, but with Saturn square later in life. That's how I'm taking it. This is a speculative thing. Until I have grandchildren or don't have them, I can't tell you for sure. Don't ever look at your house of children. It's empty. Your house of grandchildren, it's empty, and think that means you don't have them. That's a mistake of very rudimentary astrological knowledge. You're always looking to the planetary rulers of the house, less so than just what the house is about. Okay? Right. Your great-grandchildren, 5 houses from the 9th, right? So your grandchildren are the 9th house and 5 houses away, the children of the grandchildren. So that's all you have to do is count around the wheel, 9, 10, 11, 12, 1, right? So your first house ruler represents your great-grandchildren. Now, this is a new technique that I've been playing with from Vedic astrology and finding it works. This is a new add-on to a class I've taught twice before and lost the recording, right? I lost it. I was going to share it with some people like on my Sky Reader and it was gone. So I'm doing it all over. Now I'm adding the method 6 derived houses for family of origin tool. And it really works well. So in Vedic astrology, your second house is your family. That means the family you grew up with, so your siblings, your relatives, your parents, like early upbringing. It means this is my fam. I grew up with these people. So your second house has another meaning besides money and resources and voice and values. It also represents your family that you grew up with. And I know that's contradictory because we think of it as the 4th house, which is still value. There's still value in the 4th house, but there's a concept of nourishment that comes to the second house. It's what we put in our mouth, right? It's our house of our food styles and stuff. And we are nourished or hopefully nourished to survive life because we grew up with a family, right? The tribe, the crew, our family that keeps us food, sheltered, and watered up, feeds us with a bottle or a nipple. So it makes sense that the Vedic astrology puts the family of origin into the second house. It's your early nurturant environment with food in the mouth, so to speak. All right. And of course, they would shape your values around money and how you speak, and it would shape those things for you because you grew up in that environment, core values, etc. The 4th house, however, the house of the mother, the home, focuses more on ancestral roots and the inherited traits. And I often call the 4th house the house of the ancestors. And, your 5th house are the gifts and talents you received from the ancestors as well. How you express your talents that came through the inherited traits. So there's a qualitative archetypal changing of the more specific meaning, right? Because you can go to the 4th house can be like, I hailed from an ancestral line, of peasants, and I'm proud of it. Okay. We're derived houses. The 5th house is your second house from the 4th house of the mother. Okay, are you tracking me? The 5th house is second from the 4th house of the mother. Here's my 4th house. It's in my chart. It's the bottom of my sky, right? And then I go second from the 4th house. That's all I do. That means that's your mom's family. So the planets in your 5th house, where does the ruler of your 5th house sit? Imagine the ruler of the 5th house is in your 10th. Maybe there's something about your mother's family and their professional achievements, that was a big part of their family. It's just kind of a categorical meaning of, oh, here's my mom's fam, not just her mom or her dad. I just mean like, this is the type of energy that represents my mother's family, the vibe. Imagine like the ruler of your mother's family is conjunct Pluto Mars. Maybe there was murder, loss, tragedy, trauma in your mother's family, her parents, her siblings. Maybe your mother's family is conjunct Jupiter. Maybe your mother's family is represented by Mercury conjunct Jupiter. Maybe they had money. Maybe they were commercially successful. Jupiter, Mercury is commercial success, trading, marketing, selling, business, stuff like that. So you get a vibe there, basically. And obviously, you need to know the meanings of the planets, the archetypes of them. You need to know what the combinations can mean. You need to know the meaning of the houses. Again, we're in a very intermediate level teaching today. The 8th house is the second from the 7th, right? So your spouse is in the 7th categorically. We're not using Gemini. We're just saying categorically, my spousal relationships are 7th house. Second from the 7th house is the 8th. It's your in-laws. It's your spouse's family. It's all of your in-laws, his siblings, his parents, it's your in-laws. Okay. So you can look to the ruling planet of your 8th house, where it falls in your chart, and ask yourself how you may or may not get along with your in-laws, or what kind of placement they fall into relative to your sky. Maybe it's good, maybe it's challenging. Maybe the ruling planet of your in-laws is conjunct Venus, and you have a lot of fun and joy and pleasure with your in-laws, or it is Venus. So, you'll be able to figure it out by just knowing the meaning of the sign, the meaning of the house, the dignity of the planet, right? That represents your in-laws. And plus the 8th house is your in-laws. So there's eclipses going through your 8th house. What's going on in the life of your in-laws? Stuff going on, big changes in their life, for example. The 11th house, right, of your chart is second from your 10th house. So your dad is in the 10th and the 11th is your dad's relatives. Now, it's tricky. I use it this way. I've been practicing it this way. It has worked. Vedic astrology also likes to call the 9th house your dad. And I think that's more of a cultural tradition. But it has more of a sort of the father is the spiritual authority in the household, okay? And I think it's cultural, because when I use it in my clients' charts in my own life, and I just do the typical mother's 4th house, 10th house is father, the father's family, his parents and his siblings as the 11th house has yielded results that are accurate. So keep it in mind. So now you know how to find your in-laws, the planet that rules your in-laws, the planet that rules your father's family categorically, and your mother's family categorically. Now, of course, I already taught you how to find your grandparents. There is that. But we just mean kind of the archetypal bundle of meaning for that. And don't use Pluto, Neptune, please, and Uranus. Use traditional rulers, right? Imagine any of you are going, okay, my in-laws are Jupiter. My dad's family is Jupiter. My mom's family is Jupiter. And Jupiter's in good shape. Maybe he's in his home kingdom of Pisces. You say, my in-laws are wealthy. My mom's family was wealthy. My dad's family was wealthy, for example. Something simple, because Jupiter rules well. Or they were teachers, or they were educators. So, knowing the meaning of the planet. So Meghan Markle and her in-laws, no love lost there. All right, no love lost there. So her in-laws is the 8th house, categorically. It's a south node of loss, right? It's loss. So there's loss, the energy of loss regarding the in-laws. It's an Aquarius 8th house ruled by Saturn. Saturn is in her 4th house, which represents her homeland, which is America. So her in-laws are ruled by Saturn in the 4th house, which for her is America. From the story right now, I'm wondering if this is why she happens to be in America and not with her in-laws around them. And the asteroid for marriage is Juno, and that looks like a little flower next to Pluto down in the bottom of the chart in her homeland. And there's a kind of death and rebirth in the marriage connected to in-laws and her own homeland. Her second husband, it's her second husband, right? She's not in her first marriage. She was married to this other guy first. But because we use derived houses from Gemini, it works. What you do is you do this. You go, okay, her first husband is Venus because we look at her moon. Her moon is in Virgo. Oh, yeah, her moon is in Virgo. And we go across the way. Her first husband is Jupiter. And then we look at the moon in Virgo and we take a tour to the house one over. And her second husband is Venus. So her second husband is Harry. Harry is Venus fallen in the 3rd house. That's her husband. What's a husband's relationship to the house of his family, right? The 8th house. That's called an aversion. He can't witness his family. Yeah, he's isolated. He had to travel, 3rd house, to America and live in America. So we see that it's very suspect that this relationship with her in-laws puts her husband in aversion to his own family, and he's also in a condition of fall. So being separated from his family and having bad vibes with his family is all a part of her chart regarding her in-laws. Saturn represents hardship, but Saturn happens to be also exalted, right? What's exaltation? It's like powerful, better than normal, super elevated energy on a high pedestal. Well, her in-laws, Saturn, are a fucking royal family, right? With Jupiter, which represents kings. So we see the quality of her in-laws as well. Like, hello, exalted tradition, Saturn's tradition connected to Jupiter, kings. And that is, and Pluto, wealth down there. We see the quality of the nature of her family, wealthy, powerful, exalted, high on a pedestal, royal family. So there's a lot going on here, but you can sort of see why there is estrangement when you look at her second husband. So we blended two tools together in this thing. We looked at the in-law planet, where it sits, what it means about the in-laws. We looked at how, with Harry being Venus, ruler of the one sign over from the moon, second from the moon, in his fall, in aversion to his own family in the 8th house. That's what happened. So Erica Kirk, I've been thinking to rectify her chart for a while. So I did it for this slideshow. It's not a deep rectification. To do that, I would look at every date in her life of major importance, including having each child, and I'd work it out a little bit more in depth. So we're not going to trust this yet, but I can see how she could be a Leo rising because of her hair. Funny enough, after Charlie died, she was on some podcast and she's talking about her hair. It's supposed to be like a feel-good chick podcast of some kind. And she's like, yeah. People ask me all the time if I have hair weaves. No, this is extensions. This is my real hair. But she's got hair, and she cares about her hair, and her hair is a thing. So yeah, Leos have that hair thing. Plus, she's a performer. I studied acting, but she does a terrible job of it. She was a model. She was a pageant queen. She was on stages. She's performative. And in fact, a lot of people criticize her, post Charlie, behavior in public is performative, like draped over his coffin, and like everyone just like cringes because 9 out of 10 people can feel bad acting when they see it. So, but just because Leos are performative doesn't mean they're good performers. But I think she's a Leo rising. Just going to say that. But we'll get to how I can use the tools we've learned, the in-law tool particularly as well, to maybe make that assumption even more true. Okay, now, and this is her natal chart if she's a Leo rising. Why do I like it? Just as a general principle before we get to the tools of in-laws and stuff. The girl is like Miss Education. She went to Regis University and she was a basketball athlete. That's Mars in the house of higher education and dignity, athletic and university, right? Basketball. And Arizona State University. She had a major in political science and international relations. 9th house is not only higher education, it represents international relations. And then she went on at Liberty University to get her legal studies degree and a master's in legal studies. Again, 9th house is law and it's universities. And finally, we have the idea that she got a doctorate in biblical studies as well that she's currently working on. What's biblical studies, guys? It's the 9th house of churches, right? So, and religion. So, and, to have her midheaven here, because I thought about maybe I could move it to the 10th house because we're rectifying. I think it's more accurate because she really is about this kind of, hey, I'm doing my education to the max for whatever reason, because she's so beautiful, probably. She wants everyone to know she's smart as well, probably, or something like that. Now, she's CEO and founder of many different things like the Everyday Heroes, which was a Romanian orphanage. When the moon is in the 9th house, people are often involved in adoption or orphanage storylines. And I believe, I might be wrong, but I think Angelina Jolie might have her moon up there. But the gist of it is I want to mother the foreigners, right? Mother the foreigners. And I'm not going to say that what she did was or was not a undercover trafficking group. I don't know, because it's all the conspiracy. I just know that looks like what you're seeing up there. And the Romanian angels. And she has a proclamation ministry to proclaim, the Bible and its truths to the world. She's a Catholic, emotionally connected to her religion, wanting to push and pioneer and proselytize and, advocate for Christian spiritual tradition. And finally, she had a clothing line as well. She had her own clothing line and she was a pageant queen. And both of those can be Venus in the 3rd house. You have to travel to pageants to represent your state or your area you live in. And that happens to be 3rd house. Beauty, Libra, 3rd house, Venus. Plus, when you found a clothing line at retail level, Venus, Libra, 3rd house. So I have a strong 80% feeling this is her chart, right? That's where I'm going. So her in-laws. Okay, her in-laws. is the 8th house, right? You'll see that there's a lot of fortune in the North Node of increase in her 8th house. This is the house when your spouse dies, where you get the money from them. So it's a shared spousal resources. So you can just go, okay, North Node of increase with a lot of wealth and fortune would mean that she's coded for benefiting financially upon the death of a spouse. And this is going to be true for her whole life, right? If she was a serial widow in her life, that she'd always have financial benefit. But also the in-laws, therefore, Jupiter rules that. Her husband's family is Jupiter in this chart. Jupiter is in the 11th house and Jupiter is in detriment. Jupiter is in a condition in which he is considered to be exiled from his home kingdom of Sagittarius. So the in-laws are a planetary placement that's in exile. It's not a positive placement. And the place from which Jupiter is exiled, right, where he'd like to be in Erica's chart, happens to be the 5th house of children. I'm wondering if it means that the grandparents have been exiled from proximity to the children. I mean, even when they were co-parenting and he was alive, but maybe even more so now that he's no longer alive. Now, if we were to look to the first, and plus just the term of an exiled planet representing the in-laws could be she's exiled them or she's exiled by them. Now, her first husband, using the lunar tool, right, that we talked about, is Venus. There's rumors that she had, so we're going to use Gemini. The moon is in Aries. The first spouse, like a spouse, is 7 houses away or opposite. That means it's Libra. That means Venus. So there's rumor she had a secret shorter marriage earlier and it's not, and it's undercover. And I find it fascinating that all the online data for her shows that she's born in Ohio, but there's no city. I cannot find a city for the life of me. I mean, that's very much her dad was Raytheon and probably an intelligence asset in a military war company. So there's a lot about her life that makes me wonder why her birthplace is not findable. Ohio is very vague. Okay. So, but if you use the tool from Gemini and we go, first husband is Libra, so it's 3rd house, 7th away. Her 2nd house is 1 house to the next sign over in zodiacal order. So you take the moon from Aries and you move it to Taurus, like you go in zodiacal order. That means her 2nd husband is also Venus. So Charlie and her first husband are Venus. And when you're working with this technique with your friends and family, you also ask the client things like, hey, where did you meet your partner? So the 3rd house, that's travel. But they didn't meet traveling. She was applying for a job. They had maybe crossed paths in Israel, but they didn't actually meet. She has a story that she thinks she saw him when she was there. Okay, whatever. She went for a job interview, and that's how they met at Turning Point USA. So the 3rd house is your local environment: bars, restaurants, pubs, neighbors, neighborhood, etc. So it's very likely that she did have a first husband, and he's probably connected to the 3rd house. The Taurus 10th house means you're going to connect to somebody in a professional setting. And often you would say to your client, well, did you meet your second partner in a professional setting? Oh my God, I was applying for a job in their corporation. Yeah. So I do think that she had a first husband. And I think Charlie is the Taurus 10th house version. That's a place of their intersection. So, but it makes Charlie Venus, right? So Charlie is still Venus in the 3rd house. That's where that planet sits. Okay. By the way, Venus means good-looking people, and Charlie's a somewhat attractive guy as well, right? And Libra represents marriage. So, however, what does Venus do? She's in an inversion or a 150-degree inconjunct to the house of the in-laws. So Charlie is like unable to witness his in-laws, her in-laws, which is his family. So from the 3rd house, Charlie cannot see his own family, which we saw the same thing happen to Harry. Harry was a planet in the 3rd house, unable to, Venus, fallen, to witness the 8th house of the spouse's chart, which is the in-laws. So Charlie probably was somewhat estranged from his family. They got together in 2019. And the rumor mill has it that the parents don't like Erica. So I saw a picture of the funeral and how they both have their bodies turned away from her as she's leaning into her mother. And both the mother and Erica are dabbing the corners of their eyes in that fake cry, because when you cry, the tears come in the inside corner of your eyes first. They don't come outside the outside corner of your eyes. We all know what tears do. So the mother and Erica are sort of leaning into each other with dramatic black garb, and they're both dabbing big handkerchiefs in the corner of their eyes. And the parents look flat and stunned and like they're shell-shocked and pale. And they're both in their body language in that photo turned away from Erica. So I think that there's very probably true, the rumors that Erica's parents don't like her. And it's funny, she was on a show and she finally mentioned the in-laws, stop, leave us alone. We need our privacy, me and Charlie's parents, because she'd never once mentioned Charlie's parents in dozens of public events before now. There's someone saying, you got to mention the parents of Charlie, hello. So there's something about that. But see, the reason I'm using this right now for you is because I think you can sort of rectify your chart again, even using the tools, right? The moon, the husband like a husband, the idea, what's the relationship with the in-laws, on and on we go. So that's my take on that. I mean, I feel that makes her definitely a Leo rising. Eric was 36 years old when Charlie died. 36 years old is your first house age. She's born November 20th. So she's in her 36th year and using several tools. I'm still trying to prove this chart, right? Her Leo first house perfection age is ruled by the sun. The sun is with the god of death in the fourth house, death in the home. So near the home of someone in her home. So there's that, right? In Scorpio, secrets and stealth. And rumor was her dad was this intelligence contractor from Raytheon. She was estranged from her dad for many, many years until she was 18, 19 when he got back in touch with her, or 17. And that's interesting because the fourth house sun is always a difficult placement. It's malefic. You've got the sun shining in the midnight hour. So her dad relationship is not easy for very obvious reasons. Second of all, perfecting from the ascendant, which is a tool you've learned if some of my more advanced students, means we take her Leo first house and we start counting the months. So November, is the first house, December is the second house, and we spin around to the 11th house month, which is going to mean that September is her 11th house. And Charlie was killed in September. And it's ruled by Mercury. Mercury is the ruler of Gemini in the 11th house. And Mercury is conjunct Pluto, the god of death. Yet more and more indications that something dire and difficult to do with death was coded for her at the age of 36. So, and it only works this well when I use a Leo rising chart. She's now in her second house age, which is all about money, encountering the south node of loss. That'll be interesting. It's also the house of speech, encountering the south node of loss. She's speaking a lot with Juno about her marriage right now. We'll see what happens. She's ruled by Mercury in the fourth house, conjunct Pluto. Anybody with a Scorpio stellium is going to have involvement in some way with secrets, stealth, three-letter agencies. The dad is there. It's the dad side of the family for sure that has that going on, but it's also the house of the mother. And the mother was also working in some of that stuff. So apparently, who knows? And she is currently in her second house age and in her third house month as I speak, right? So November is her month of the second house and December is her third house month. And what is she doing right now? She's on a publicity blitz for Charlie's book. Okay. So she's out there in the month of December doing a bunch of shows. Fox News, CBS, Barry Weiss, on and on. So you can see that why I'm sharing this with you, because it makes sense. If she's in her second house age, about speech, and now she's in her third house month and she's on a publicity tour, and part of it is to contradict conspiracy theories, which make more common sense. And yeah, that's what she's doing. So that makes me really convinced this is her chart. And September 10th, these are the transits that happened on her new Leo rising identity. And I think this is very important because it also supports her being a Leo rising. So I'm not going to go on too long. This is for my advanced students, but the transiting midheaven in Orem, Utah on Juno, something to do with collective recognition or publicity around her marriage and south node loss and letting go. Mars is crossing Venus. In the chart, Venus is Charlie. Mars is at 22 degrees. Basically, Charlie's sun is at 22 degrees, crossing Mars is crossing. Mars on the outside wheel, transiting on Orem, Utah that day, is crossing her husband. Mars is shooter, Mars is death, Mars is violence. So this makes this chart very accurate because where was he? He was traveling, third house, to go to an event, stumping on an event. And he was Martian sliced by Mars. There's a lot of other correlations, but over there, Pluto on the descendant, of course, death of a spouse, but that's going to be there for a while, but it's coded. She's having Athena return. Athena represents legal matters, but also military. And there's all kinds of conspiracy that it was a military operation, assassination. She's having a lunar return, moon on moon in the midheaven ninth house with chironic wound to her reputation. And moon is publicity. So her reputation isn't doing well. People are polling all the time, even on conservative channels. Do you trust Erica Kirk? Do you believe her? And she's polling terrible with the people, really terribly, as being like suspicious or complicit, or they don't believe her, or they don't think she's working on the best interests of the investigation being authentic. So she's got bad polling and a chironic wound to her reputation. And finally, Uranus is transiting Jupiter, her exiled Jupiter. That's just kind of a shock and awe story that's going to emerge in her life at this age. And it's really tight, right? It's really a 1 degree and 1 degree Jupiter Uranus conjunction by transit on the day of the assassination. And that's what I got for you. So I think that's her chart. I'm not going to do the minor asteroids right now, but if you were to take Erica's chart, and I'm happy to give you the exact data that I got on the chart, and you were to look for the asteroid Charlie or the asteroids Tyler, Robinson, there are asteroids for Tyler and Robinson, or the asteroid for Candace, there'll be a name Candace, you'll get to see how Erica Kirk intersects with the cast of characters in the soap opera. All right, now this is the one-time keep it forever guidebook of these tools and techniques, okay? I could do an entire class on just one of them. All right. Now, this is definitely going to be over your head if you haven't learned planetary dignity, meanings of the houses, and so don't worry. But if you hold on to the PDF and the slideshow copy PDF and this teaching, hopefully that will be something that you can use for the rest of your astrological learning. Rabbit hole. Yes, Farah, go down the rabbit hole. Someone do the rabbit hole. I maybe have time next week to actually do some of the asteroids on her chart. It was only this like yesterday that I decided to rectify your chart, and I think it works. Does anyone have technique questions? And I'm happy to address them so that I can straighten out some confusion.
There were a lot of people were asking back when you were speaking about the techniques for children. So we had a lot of people jumping into the chat asking, what about lost pregnancies? Does that count anywhere in there? And then the other about children was about adoption. And now I'm personally wondering, because when you brought up moon in the ninth house, if that would be something to look at in there when you were talking about adoptive children of the moon being in the ninth house.
Well, it's more like the moon in the ninth house, and the ninth house means children from foreign lands, right? Or mothering children in a foreign place. So I don't have a clean-cut answer for adoption. If you're going to parent the child and you get the child, the child doesn't show up like a 16-year-old, in the middle of the household after years, that's different. But I'm sure like if you get a baby coming into your arms, like under a year or two old, and you're parenting that child, it will probably work just the way it normally would. Yes, I'm going to assume it would. And that's where you get empirical, because you have the children in your life. So in other words, you go, oh, I had my firstborn child. This is Lori's chart, right? Me. I had my firstborn child. That means that Mercury, ruler of my fifth house, is my son right here. Oh, and I had my secondborn child. That would be my daughter here, Leo. And that means, oh, look, there she is with my son. They get along. So that and also means, hey, it looks like my kids like each other. They actually do. Quite like it, even socialize together, despite a 10-year age gap. But if I was going to, now I really want to adopt a child, I feel like I need another one in my life, then it would be Libra, the next child over, 1, 2, 3, sibling, the youngest sibling to my first two. And then I get that child in my life. And I would ask myself, does it seem true that Venus, right, is this child? Does the child have the qualities of sort of the Venusian and Taurian things? Does the child want to stay home and never leave the nest? So you have to ask yourself if it seems true. I would doubt that like taking in a foster kid in his teen years is going to be a child, but adopting a baby or somebody really young under the age of 3 maybe is probably going to fit the bill. Second of all, if you have a stillbirth, yes, that child is the second born, third born, fourth born, right? If you have a miscarriage, no. That's not like, I know that that's life and there's a heartbeat and all of that, but it is the breath of life. And it's like the baby is arriving. You know what I mean? I would say if you had a late term failure of the baby to thrive and something went wrong, baby died in utero, and maybe it's like 8 months in, 7 months in, like third trimester, I would go third trimester. I'd likely say third trimester losses and or stillbirths or a death of a child, in labor. Yeah, I'd count that for sure. For sure. But yeah, we all have babies. We all lose babies in our first trimester, just like we had a heavy period. So we have to really parse the two, right? So third trimester feels more true to me. But again, you'll have to be an empiricist. Third trimester in esoterica, like for the spiritual stuff, is when the soul of the child is coming in and out of the baby's body in utero. Like I'm out with my guides hanging, come in and hear my mother's voice, so I like the sound of her voice. There's more of an idea that the third trimester is the soul is now inhabiting the fetus. Okay. So take it as you will. That's a great. These are great questions. Anything else that someone wants to ask?
There was, I see Kristen has her hand up.
Hey,
there
Kristen.
was one other question that was asked if I would ask it for them because they're shy. And essentially it was on when you were going over looking for partners and partnerships. At first I wasn't sure what they were asking, but then in the conversation, so I just want to make sure that I answered this correctly. Someone who has a stellium in a house, and when they're deriving their partners and they find that ruler, and a lot of the rulers will then end up where that stellium is. So that would, in essence, double down on the themes of partnerships for them.
Oh, well, yeah. So imagine you have like 5 planets in one sign, and it's very likely that husband 1, 2, or 3, or wife 1, 2, or 3 will fall into that stellium, right? But there's still, that just means they're all in one house, right? So the house, the meaning of the house seems to connect to many different long-term partnerships in some way, but there's still different planets, right? So usually, sometimes you'll go 2 in a row, like I'll be with a Venus, Mercury, Jupiter, like that. But you really want to look at the meaning of the planet as well, right? Not just the meaning of the sign and the meaning of the house. So a spouse who's Jupiter for a female is considered the ideal planet unless Jupiter's in detriment, right? And Venus is the ideal spouse for a male in the ancient heterosexual tradition. So you have to, parse the planetary meanings. The Gemini technique is very flexible and accurate. And it'll stun you because it has more nuance, like using the moon as the anchor. And I want to encourage you guys to play with that, because I'll be with a client or even my own chart, and I'll say, I don't know if I'm going to count that person. You were only dating for 2 years, but you never lived together. But then if we add that person, it fits. It's often so simple because it's, where did you meet the person? I think I'm going to spend 5 more seconds on this one because this is important. I'll just use me as an example, right? Here's my moon. So the first spouse, like a spouse in my life, is here. It's Libra, which is Venus. And then there's Venus in the 4th house of home, close to home, near my home, right? There's something about that first long-term committed love relationship that has a quality of being in a close to home setting, but at the very same time, connected to higher education, right? What could that be? Well, that was the guy I got engaged to in university. All right, who lived in a town not too far from where I lived, is in the same, part of, the same province in my country. And it's funny because it also involves the marriage asteroid, Juno, and we were engaged and I canceled it at the last minute. So we get the higher educational operating system. The first person is opposite my university house, right? So that works. And the second one, I go this way, second from my moon, and I end up with the same thing. I get Venus with the marriage goddess. That's the guy I married, right? I married the guy close to home. I went to a house party and I met him at a house party, literally probably 8 blocks from my house where I lived in Ottawa. And I met him in proximity to my home, and we became married. But it's interesting because what does Venus do? Venus rules the ninth house. He also happened to be a professor at the university I was in, but I didn't meet him in the professorship. I met him at a house party. And we eventually moved to a foreign land together. So because Venus is always going to bring, we moved to the United States, is always going to bring the foreign lands and the things to do with homes. And so you ask questions to see, is this person really fit? Because if I start counting now, the shortcut technique, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, I'm using the shortcut technique. It's all in the slideshow. Jupiter is my third spouse, long-term committed love relationship like a husband. You can't make this shit up. This part of the sky represents groups, social groups and events that you do with other people of some sort, right? And actually Sag represents Fly the Friendly Skies. I went to a shamanic workshop for a 3-day event in Florida from my home country, flew the Friendly Skies in a group event of about 40 people, and I met this guy. And we began a almost 3-year relationship. And here's Jupiter. Well, Jupiter is power. Jupiter is wealth. Jupiter is generous. Jupiter's conjunct Chiron to do with medical matters, healings, and the science of healing and medicine. He was a doctor, and he was the head of the hospital. He was the head of the hospital. The power. Jupiter people are going to be head of something, going to be like, at the top of some kingdom, Mount Olympus. So he was whatever you call the guy that's the top dog in a hospital. I can't remember, chairman or whatever, the top guy. And he was a very famous doctor as well for stuff he'd done with vaccine policy. Vaccines are Mars. Let's stick a needle in you. So all of that said, I could say to my client, well, it looks like the next person, you might meet them in a group setting. Maybe you're traveling the Friendly Skies. It's sad. Maybe they're like a head of some organization to do with healing or medicine. And then generosity, right? So Jupiter is it's a generous, magnanimous energy. And of course he had a lot more money than me. He was older than me, and he spent money freely on me. He was very kind and generous financially with me. So, and I'm not going to do my whole life, but you see, what if I said to my client, okay, this next third person is that like generous, magnanimous, wealthy, leaderful, maybe involved in medicine. Okay. If I had said that to my client and they want me to count somebody in between, it doesn't fit the bill, like that my marriage ended and then I dated a guy for at least a year, but I'm sure he counts. And I say to the client, well, was he generous, magnanimous, wealthy, leaderful, involved in medicine? And they go, no. Okay, then we don't count that person because you make stories about the planet to see if it fits. So the person with the stellium, sure, maybe I have 6 planets here in my second house. So all of these people have to have money matters involved in how I relate to them. But they're also different planets, and they have different meanings, and they have different areas of influence in the rest of the chart, right? Not just one area of influence, right? So, yeah. And then, ultimately it's kind of ironic because that guy, because Jupiter rules my midheaven, and he was a massive supporter of my career and helped me get started in a major career change direction through being like an ally for that, for my midheaven. So there's a sense of it, what do you call it? Collateral benefits of that relationship. Not only did we travel the world together, Ecuador and Africa and whatever else, we were world travelers together, but he really was able to help me maximize my career space by being super, super supportive, energetically supportive of me. Okay, so there you go. So hopefully that gives that tool a little more nuance of how to say, should I count that guy I dated for 6 years, but we lived across the country? Try to find him in order, see if it fits the story or not, and then you'll know. Okay. Kristen, you have your hand raised.
Hi, thank you, Laurie. Awesome class. With the parents, sun and moon, is it just a coincidence when it falls in their respective signs? Is there any extra meaning to that?
You mean the moon is in Cancer and the sun is in Leo?
Yeah, or moon, Virgo, sun, Sagittarius.
Oh, you mean the parental signs? It's just a coincidence. It's not just a coincidence. It just means that then, say my dad is a Virgo sun and my son is in Virgo. It means his sun is close to your sun. So you could say if you're doing synastry for a relationship, my dad's sun is with my son, and my mom's moon is with my moon. You can make stories about that as a relational quality.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Yeah, that is coincidence. Yeah. I see Jamie Gordon, Sacred Mysteries hand is up.
Hi, Lori. Thank you for the class. This is amazing. I have a question. When trying to find if people will adopt children with their fifth house, like, they don't have any children, will they end up adopting? Like, maybe what would be the significators of someone pursuing adoption?
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I say more, I can tell you if they're having grandkids, and if say they have their they had cancer of the womb and they removed the womb or something, then they could have grandkids because they're doing a surrogacy, or they could have grandkids because they marry someone with children. But I really don't know where to derive adoption as a concept, you see, because an adoption means it's somebody else's child. So I guess you could say, if I was trying to work on this as an idea, you want to research it, the moon is parenting, right? It's to do with nurturing the life of another. You could conceivably, you could say to yourself, if I'm going to adopt somebody, right? The moon is my nurturant incubator of a baby, whether I'm a man or a woman, it doesn't matter. And the seventh house from the moon is the other person. So watch what I'm doing. Here's the moon. This is somebody else, right? This is the person, but it's their child. So my moon goes over to the ninth house, Libra, and I say a child of another. I can go like this: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The child of another person, seventh from my moon, that I could acquire their child would be opposite the moon, add 5 houses for children, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I could say, okay, Saturn is the planet that rules adoption, perhaps in my chart. Now, what I just told you, I made it up because I'd have to research to see if it works. But it makes sense to me that another person's child, the other person will be opposite the moon. Not, to me, it makes sense because the moon is a nurturant planet rather than just saying opposite the ascendant. But I guess you could do it that way. You could also say, here's somebody else and here's their children, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And Jupiter can rule me adopting children. Or if I did the moon technique, it would be Saturn. But then that requires research into people who've adopted children, like maybe Angelina Jolie, and looking at if that works in her chart.
Okay. Because I was wondering, sometimes, if my clients come and they're like, will I have children? And you don't see it, but they be like, well, I was going to adopt my husband's child or something, and now I'm going to raise them as my own. Or, like if you get, you have to take, you adopt someone else's child or a family member's child, or, something in that case. So I was wondering, could you see that in the chart? So thank you very much.
I think people need to do more like hardcore research with famous people who've adopted children to see what's true about that or not. And, make a pattern recognition happen. Like here's my fifth house of children. And does Mercury rule it? Yes. Can Mercury witness it? Yes. Right. So I would say, to me, if I was my own astrologer, it looks like you can have children. And Mercury sextiles the house of children, and you're probably going to have children, right? So I don't see a problem for me having kids. So I wouldn't even be scooping into the adoption story in this kind of chart. I'd be like, looks like you're having kids, and look at that Vestal flame of devotion, a very devoted mother, right? And how did I show my devotional love to my kids? I was the queen of the kitchen, right? I love cooking. There's the Vestal flame of the hearth fire. So, it's very literal. Your charts can be very literal. Like planets in your fifth house can be how you parent. If you have Ceres there, you're like over functioner, like you're rescuing your kid from the underworld. So there's like ways you parent by looking at the planets in the fifth house, but then there's a quality of your children individually as well.
Okay, great. Because I'm going to look at that, because my own children, I have 3, but my South Node is in my fifth house. And so there's nothing else in there besides my IC. So I was like, that's interesting that, how it plays.
How old are you?
I am 48.
Yeah. So you didn't have kids of your own?
No, I have 3 kids of my own.
But you do.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. So it's very like trying to do a lot of research, because what's in my fifth house is just my IC and my South Node, but no.
So always remember, it's not. Yeah. So we don't care about having kids or not having kids is completely separate from planets in the house. South Node means soulmate kids, soul pod, past lives, right? You've had them, you've been with them before, right? That's all that means. And so basically, you're bringing back past life connections through your womb, children, especially the firstborn, right?
Yes, exactly. My first that is my firecracker. Yes.
Yeah. So that we never talk to somebody about fertility based on what planets are in their fifth house. If Mars is there, they'll have miscarriages and maybe abortions, right? Pluto, they might suffer also similar difficulties, maybe the loss of a child, death of a child. I don't tell people that because it's too hard for them to hear, but that's there. But, or Jupiter there, they'll have more than one child, right? Saturn there, they'll have a child late in life or only one child, a paucity of children. Venus there, maybe a beautiful child. So you can say qualities of the planets in the fifth house mean something, but it's the ruler of the fifth house and where it sits in the chart that tells us the likelihood of children.
Makes sense. Okay. That's great. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. You're so welcome. Any other hands up? Anybody have some questions, or are we getting ready to tie it up?
I think we're getting ready to tie it up, but there was one question that I saw in the comments that I thought was a really good question. They were asking if there are any timing tools that you would recommend using with any of these different methods. So those of us who are like, when is my person going to come along? When am I going to have children? When are my children going to have children? That kind of thing. Is there any timing tool that you would pair up with this to try to forecast, aside from a horary?
Yeah, no, that's great. Well, clearly, if you know the spouse that's coming next, I prefer the Gemini technique, right? So, for example, my next partner will be Mars. This is the next person I will be with based on this tool. And I've gone around the sky, I've confirmed who's who and what's what, and I'm certain of this. Okay, so if I'm going to be with this Mars guy, something's got to wake Mars up, right? It's like something's got to bring him into my life. Well, how about eclipses through the Pisces axis that are still ongoing next year? We still have a Pisces Virgo eclipse left over, 2 danglers at the end of it all. So maybe eclipses moving through this axis will bring this person to me. Or what about Jupiter? As Jupiter is moving through the sign of Cancer, trining my Mars, especially next year, like it's Jupiter retrograde and he's turning around at 15 degrees. And when he turns around in March, he's going to cross over my Mars again. So maybe Jupiter in my professional house of work. And this is a money-making house. I might meet this guy through my livelihood. You see? So I'm waiting for we'll call it Mr. Mars. And I can say, well, when will Mr. Mars have a lot of sky action that wakes him up? Or what's my relationship to Mr. Mars based on my profection age? I'm in my 4th house age right now, ruled by Venus with this energy. So maybe I could meet Mr. Mars through being ruled by the goddess of love, with the goddess of marriage, close to home, meeting somebody through this axis of me wandering through my 4th house. Second of all, when it comes to that's a spousal story. When it comes to having kids or grandkids, once my firstborn child is Mercury, and I still haven't had kids yet. My son was born when I was 27. I could be looking at that going, well, I know my firstborn child's going to be Mercury, right? Okay. So what's the likelihood that something's going on that activates Mercury that could show a conception? And if I went back to my life when I was 26, 7, conceiving and birthing a child, he was conceived in November. So I was 26. I would probably be able to find things going on in my chart at the age of 26 that highly woke up this Mercury, right? I could do a forensic audit of the past and go, oh my God, this baby was coming, right? Like there's no way I'm going to avoid that child. Look at what's going on here. There's like an eclipse cycle going through here. And then you add that there's Jupiter squatting on my Mercury for children. Similarly, my son, which is my daughter, I could go back and look at conceiving her at 35, 36. What was waking up my son? What activity? Because the sun is the daughter to come. See what I mean, guys? So you can look at these planets and you can, same with you're looking at your grandkids, right? And you might be finding firstborn grandchild could be Venus, the ruler of my 9th house. And my 9th house is Venus. So what could activate Venus down here in Taurus? It tells me the timing of a firstborn grandchild. And then I say, oh my God, I actually psychically know my daughter and my daughter-in-law are both going to conceive together and be pregnant together. I could see it psychically, but it's not till 2027. But then I would ask myself, what the hell's waking this thing up in 2027 that the grandchild, general meaning of grandchildren, this is my Venus, is going to be really activated at that time. Well, certainly the eclipses are squaring. That's definitely making some shifts happen, right? But I'd be really tuned in to like moon cycles or lunar cycles or things that wake up this particular planet that represent me. I don't have grandchildren yet, me having grandchildren. So what I like about the tool is it's prophetic in the sense that you know that's going to be your next husband or wife or long-term partner. You know that planet represents your next born child or firstborn child or thirdborn child. And you watch what happens to the planet in the sky vis-a-vis real-time activations, especially eclipses, especially when it comes to big planetary movements, Saturn or Jupiter, like the real more rare combinations, you know, to show you what's waking up the potential that the planet represents. Does that make sense to you, Mel? Because someone was asking it and you were just reiterating it.
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense. And I think it's a great addition. I love how you packaged all of these modalities all in one place, condensed. And I think that's a great addition to top it off.
Yeah. And I know for you guys who are new to astrology or just getting your feet wet, that there's a lot here, right? Like this would be something that people who'd gone through Sky Reader would be able to use pretty effectively because they really inherently understood the meaning of a house, the meaning of a planet, the meaning of a sign. You know, they really, the dignitary situations, dignified, undignified. So once you've got the language more under your belt, then this tool is great, but it still works. And the only thing I want to say that I always found happen with clients over and over again is I'd say to the client that your partner is Mercury in Gemini. And they go, yeah, but he's not a Gemini. I go, it's nothing to do with the sign of your partner. It's the proxy planet for your partner, for your child, for your spouse, for your grandchildren. The planetary placements are proxies, they're placeholders. However, this is really interesting because when a planetary, like say my last long-term relationship, the guy was Mercury. Okay. So any transits or major activations of Mercury in my chart will impact the relationship. There was an eclipse that was conjunct Mercury in March of 2025, and it ended the relationship. The guy is Mercury, which is friendship, and we're best friends. We talk all the time. We're no harm, no foul, no nothing, right? So, but you know, you might be in a marriage. I'll say to my clients, oh my God, well, the planet that represents your current partner is being eclipsed right now. Either they're going to have a major life problem or change, or Saturn depression, or Jupiter expansion and well, or there's a change in the relationship. Okay. There you go. All right, guys, that's a lot. That's 2 hours. Keep this tool handy. If you don't get it now, you'll get it later. This is my defining class. I'm never teaching this one again. So unless I learn another tool, I feel like Mel's laughing. All right. I'll see you guys around on Patreon and on YouTube land. You're welcome, Sarah. Everyone have a wonderful Sunday, December 14th. Enjoy the holiday season. Take care, everyone. Bye. Bye, all of you guys. Take care. Bye-bye.